The button, it's you. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Story Studio podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about commercialism and trends. And to that end, we have Niamh from our company here. She makes all the wheels turn and makes Sean's ideas actually happen, as opposed to when Sean and I were in charge and we would just kind of toss the idea back and forth and it wouldn't happen, which was a lot of fun.
That's because I'm an activator and she's a maximizer. That's why.
Yeah, Sean was an activator and apparently I'm also an activator. I'm gonna guess. So here, do it. And Sean had all the ideas too, and it didn't work for anybody. So Niamh is here, and we're gonna be talking about commercialism and trends. And this, I think, it'll be interesting to see which way the episode goes, but I think that just on a first blush, it's a really, really interesting topic to talk about right now from the angle of everybody's looking for how to be commercial and how to follow trends, and there are right and wrong ways to look at trends. And I think a lot of people do it wrong, just saying. So this should be kind of cool. So welcome to the show. Niamh, you've been on before, I believe. Yeah, you were on before. So welcome back.
Thank you. I'm always happy to hop on. It's good to be here. And
the loudmouth you hear in the background is Bonnie, who is also here.
We are going to have to be like, chill out, Bonnie. This is one of our, does anyone have anything cool? Niamh, do you have something cool? Do you want to start with something cool? Is there more or less drinking there in Ireland lately?
Oh, that's a huge thing. It's whether or not pubs are reopened. But that's been always the question throughout the entire pandemic is when are pubs going to reopen?
Is that the most important thing where you live?
Yeah, for sure. Pubs definitely were like the number one thing people were concerned with. Second is hairdressers. When are hairdressers going to reopen?
We had a lot of that here too.
I thought you were going to say second was food and oxygen.
No, funny enough, and we don't have there's not as much people who do like the ordering food and things like that. Even just regular ordering, we don't have our own Amazon, so ordering stuff online is just not. It's not as big a thing here, so people have had to sort of go out.
Wait, you can't decide you want something at lunchtime and get it before dinner time?
I can decide I want something and have it within 2 weeks.
And a third world country do you live in?
You are Niamh, I knew you wanted to move, but I didn't know you were living under duress.
Well, do you know that like having like Mike and I talk about this all the time. Do you know we're going to have like an Amazon that will deliver next day? And do you know that you can actually return stuff if you don't like it?
Wait, you can't return either?
Not really. So
it just takes 6 weeks.
They guilt trip you.
No, well, because if we get something that we have to order from the amazon.co.uk, and so technically it's a different country, and so technically it's international shipping. So by the time it gets here, you could ship it back, but it would cost you international shipping to ship back, and they're not going to take on that shipping fee.
That's just the UK trying another way to get Ireland back. This is what we're going to do. You can be a part of our Amazon.
Wait,
well, harass them.
Hey, dude, the joke was on my lips, and I just stole yours. And
the IRA's like, oh, we're going to fight this.
We are just stepping on each other today.
Yeah.
Well, is that something cool that you can't international ship?
I have been watching stuff. I have been reading stuff, but I couldn't tell you one thing that I'm watching or reading right now because I did not think in advance. So
that happens.
Forgot about something.
Yeah, that totally happens. How about Dave? Dave, do you have anything?
I haven't watched anything in weeks. I know Umbrella Academy comes out today or tomorrow.
So is yours something cool that you have been diligently writing and so immersed in your story world that you haven't surfaced for someone else's?
Yes, that is part of it. And also that, my family.
Do you want to do something uncool and tell a story about your family?
No.
Are you sure?
No, because they're too nearby.
Yeah, that's why, right?
Yes.
Do you want to use code words like Calvin for your wife and Hobbs for your...
S.
Johnny, do you have anything cool?
I have several because I started making a list specifically because of this. Although if we don't continue something cool, then I've solved a problem that's no longer going to be an issue. I have two kind of half ones. So
two halves make a
barrel
whole.
through both of them because I figure that's a whole. And the first is a half because I think you may have mentioned it before and because it wasn't like I was blown away. I just thought it was interesting as I finally saw Searching.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And that was interesting because the entire thing is literally on a screen. Now, after a while, you start to feel like, okay, well, this should have just been shot live, but okay, I guess it has to be a screen at this point. So there's like drone footage or something ridiculous like that. But I thought it was interesting. I wasn't blown away by the movie, but I thought it was really kind of cool. And I would also think just from
Is that Blumhouse?
I was thinking it has to be Blumhouse just because of how it feels, but I'm not sure. I think it's there's another company like Neon, a production house that I always, and I can't forget what it is, studio something. But anyway, so I thought that was kind of interesting also from an efficiency standpoint, because when you're shooting just webcam footage, right? Like there's no way that the production on that was super difficult in terms of the actual cinematography, because it was just webcam footage and stuff. So I thought that was interesting. And then my other half is a half because I feel like maybe somebody mentioned it, and I also thought it was kind of stupid, so it's not entirely cool. The second half was stupid. Did you guys see Brightburn?
No, I wanted to, but I did not. It got bad reviews, and so I just
Bonnie nodded, and I kind of another time, because there would be spoilers, kind of want to talk to Bonnie about it, because the things that I had a problem with were character based, and it was a really cool concept. Because
I love the trailer.
It's a really good concept. Is like, what if they never say Superman? I'm thinking they didn't have the licensing or whatever.
It's clearly Superman.
Right. He like lands in the back of this farm in his asteroid, and the family has been wanting a child, and they haven't been able to have one, and so they adopt him and just like, shh, don't tell anyone he's an alien. And then he turns evil. And I think my main problem, without much spoilers, is that he does just kind of turn evil. Like there's not a lot of
there's no real build up. Like I thought it would be like, he gets bullied and he kind of gets turned into this thing, but no, there's no character development.
Yeah, that sounds like a huge wasted opportunity.
I have some very specific things I'd like to mention about it, but I don't want to spoil it. But it was just that. It was like I could hear Ryan George the whole time. Well, so what happens to make him evil? Well, he's evil. Well, you need something more than that. Okay, puberty. Puberty's tight. So those are
wow, that sounds dead on. Bonnie, do you have anything?
Yeah, I actually do. I've been watching Doom Patrol, and it's not.
Is that like Paw Patrol?
No, it's like a DC. It's a DC show.
On HBO Max, yes.
Yeah, and I thought it was going to be kind of goofy and silly from the trailer, but my husband wanted to watch it, and they really grabbed me in episode 3, and like they've just been doing some really interesting things, both with storytelling and with character development. It's kind of like they're using Lost style flashbacks, but it's kind of like a combination of Legion and Umbrella Academy, just in terms of like the type of world it is and the type of stories they're telling.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. I tagged it when HBO Max came out, and I'm looking at everything, that they have, and you can like tag what you want to watch later. I tagged it, but it was not high on my list at all. And then yesterday, I think you said, or a couple days ago, you're like, yeah, I'm off to watch Doom Patrol. And I'm like, well, that's kind of an unlikely choice for Bonnie, but go Bonnie, that's cool. But now that makes total sense. And now it's way higher on my list, because I like, you've literally never given me a bad recommendation. So
Awesome.
yeah, I got something. It's a show that we started. Okay, so last night we started on someone on a stand-up, and it just like 10 minutes in, it just was not funny. And when you haven't laughed once and you're 10 minutes into someone's routine, it's just time to bail. And so we were looking, like, we didn't really want to get started on something, and we thought, oh, we'll watch something that's maybe disposable and we'll never watch again. But I really liked the first episode of, it's reality, it's not scripted, but of this show called Love on the Spectrum, which is just, it's a new Netflix show that it's like maybe like a Queer Eye type of thing, where they're following people and improving their lives. But there's three stories. There's a guy named Michael who's 25 and he's been wanting to get married since he was 15, and he really wants to find a wife, and he's gonna like just treasure her. And then there's someone who is deaf. She was, you know, deaf and autistic, and then a couple that's already like in love and living together and trying to figure out, you know, how to live their life.
How
And
to
all
end
the
their
stories,
lives.
yeah. Just Dave. And all the story, like, it's just so human. Like, it's such a human show, and it's just really very sweet to see people figuring it out. And I just love how the amount of honesty, like there's nothing clipped. They just say, you know, I mean, this is just one example, but there's so many. But the 25-year-old Michael is having dinner at his house, and his sister is in high school, and he says, relationships are different when you're my age. When you're age, they're just about intercourse. And but he's also just like saying it, and she's like trying to turn her head, and they're just these beautiful, honest moments. So anyway, Love on the Spectrum seems like a show that I'm going to enjoy a lot.
Yay.
All right, well, let's.
I thought of one. I have to throw it in.
Hey, success, triumph.
What have I been watching? Okay, and I know if we eventually get rid of these, then I want to have gotten some good ones out before we do. Yellowstone. So, or the show that I call Not Yosemite, because I always forget what it's called, so I always call it that. But it's Kevin Costner, and you know, he's sort of the patriarch of this family in Montana who have this enormous amount of land, and
They should build a baseball field on it.
He should, but his whole thing in this one is he doesn't want them to come. So it's all about the land and about the, you know, it's really sort of about the push-pull between, you know, trying to preserve a way of life and the creep of modern life. And so it's all this family and these really interesting dynamics. But what I love so much about it is just the amount of space that's in the show. You know, there's just so much where you're just sitting there and watching as the camera is panning out over the landscape, or where all of the characters are, you know, they're on a cattle drive, or, you know, they're doing something where you're really getting to experience it, and it gives you the sense of what it is that they're fighting for. So rather than the characters having to explain all the time what they care about, it's like you get pulled into what they care about, and you're on the very different and conflicting sides. You know, there's a nearby reservation, and the Native American, you know, leader there wants to reclaim some of this land. So everyone's battling for something that they really care about, and you can actually feel all the different sides of that argument, really. And so I'm 3 seasons into this now, and I absolutely love it. I just feel like it's almost cinematic. You just get to sit there and experience it. So
how long are the seasons?
I think 10 episodes long, 10 to 12. And there's some really interesting characters in there.
Yeah, that's great.
I think everyone here would love it.
It was my favorite. I didn't know that was coming to Peacock. And so when Peacock launched, and I'm just, there's not that much amazing new content. Like, it's a library, which is great, but Brave New World, I'll see it eventually, maybe, if there's another season or two. And I don't even remember, Intelligence. I can still smell it. Have you guys, has anyone seen Intelligence?
I don't have Peacock.
It's a new David Schwimmer sitcom where he plays this like super, I don't know, misogynistic, racist guy from the NSA who's going over to MI6 to fix things up. It's ill-conceived, it's poor, like, it's just terrible. And it's on a streamer, and there's commercial breaks. Like, it was meant for TV.
He stars as this character?
Yes. It's just like, they were like, hey,
stick with what you're good at.
I remember, you know, we used to have that thing where you were in Friends, and we made friends, and, you know, must-see TV. How about just making everyone forget about that forever? Are you interested? And he's like, well, I'm not doing anything. It's just really bad. Anyway, I saw that Yellowstone was available, and I was like, yay, I've heard great things about this. So that sounds awesome. And I'm glad that you thought of that, because it's a perfect tie-in to our show, which is commercialism. And we're all like, what are we, you know, something cool could be anything in the world, but it is, other than Dave, which is his something uncool is his family home. It's usually about what we're consuming, you know, and we consume the things that rise to the top. Some of that is because it's critical, you know, where, oh, we really have to see that. I've heard enough great things about it. You know, some is just because, you know, it gets shoved down our throats because it's right there on the Netflix tile right up front, and then in the top 10, and then everybody's talking about it. And then the best of it is stuff that the critics can't stop talking about it and people can't stop watching it. And that's the commercial sweet spot we're all looking for. And that's why I was so happy to see Yellowstone, because I'd heard great things about it, but I didn't have access to it, you know, so I heard great things about it, and now it's there, it's available. Oh, a lot of people like this. A lot of people said great things about it. I'm really excited to add that to my watch list. You know, Bonnie just recommended Doom Patrol, which I heard about, but you know, that word of mouth coming from somebody who I trust their litmus, it's great. It's why Legion is on my list, even though I've still not managed to see it. Dave couldn't stop talking about that, and so I knew I had to go see that. So it's been funny because we've had such a mind to creating these commercial series in the company, and they've been very individual. It's not like, hey, let's come up with a concept that is just super commercial and then we'll go sell that. It's not like that at all. It's thinking
Legion's
about,
not commercial, by the way.
right,
At all.
I understand that. It's niche. Doom Patrol's niche, right? Yellowstone is commercial. Yellowstone is, you know, I don't think it's as commercial as Umbrella Academy, you know, which you mentioned, but content is becoming so niched that anything can be commercial, right? You just need to know how to optimize it for the largest possible audience. And that's what we're trying to do internally. It's not like, hey, what's the very best idea that we can come up with? It's like, what is the idea that this particular artist can create? Because that's the most commercial that we can get. It's a sweet spot. It's not like, I mean, Johnny and I, actually all of us, me and Johnny, and then separately me and Dave, have taken very commercial ideas and made them less commercial. By the time we're done with them, we're like, good luck, marketing team.
It's
right?
a talent, really.
We know we wrote great stories, but we didn't put them through the prism of the widest possible audience, which is what it means to be commercial. So Niamh has joined our team, and she's like a commercial geek. Like, you know, she subscribes to K-Lytics, like before she ever wrote a book, y'all, like just because she
I like the data.
This is a true story. Okay. So just, you know, wanting to understand how genre works and how customers behave. And in this case, customers means readers. That's a great asset to a studio with a bunch of people who just want to tell stories, right? We just want to tell stories. So we're as a fabric, I think we're in a really good place because we have a lot of ideas getting popped all around, but then they get restrained. And sometimes it's hard. Like we had this whole conversation about why religion makes something less commercial in a very specific context. And it was a little bit like sad trombone because there were ideas that were exciting and we wanted to explore, but we also had to acknowledge, is that going to diminish how much reach it can have? So, Niamh, like, what is your overall kind of perspective on commercialism and why it matters and how to do it right instead of wrong and all of that?
Yeah, well, I think it's important that we also kind of just mention the context of the project that Sean is referring to, where we specifically said we're going to take, you know, every author in the studio and create the most commercial possible series for them. And that's not to restrain anybody, and that's not to say now we will only ever make decisions based on how commercial something is going to
porn.
be. Yeah, this was a specific project as a way to go out and find new audience members. So I think commercialism is particularly important when it comes to outreach, to getting more people reading your books, because if no one knows who you are, they don't have any reasons to say yes to you. They don't know if you're a good author or not. They don't know what, just because your book cover looks nice, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to like what's inside of it. So they're using different cues to tell them whether or not to try something. And usually those cues are the experiences that they've had with other people's work. So if they know, okay, I like this genre, then they're more likely to try a new author where it looks exactly like the kind of book that they already know that they like. And that's the books that are the most on genre, the most sort of commercial. They have Seth likes to say frictionless, you know, that there's very little there to make them say no. So then they're more willing to give it a try. But if there's something about that book that makes them go, oh, I don't know, that it's could even just be a feeling that they get, that they're like, I don't really know what this book is about. They're not going to necessarily be that willing to give a new author a try on that. So doing this within the studio, and what I would recommend to anyone listening is, you know, make your most commercial ideas be the little fishhooks out there that are finding you new readers, and focus your marketing efforts on those and your ads efforts on those, and use those as the way that you find new people. And then bring people from those works, from your more commercial works to your less commercial works, because at that point then they know that they like you, they know you've given them a great reading experience, and it's going to be much easier for them to say yes to reading a different book. So that's how I like to consider it when it comes to books. I love marketing. Like, I am a real nerd. I genuinely really like to sit around and think about marketing. I like to think about putting puzzles together as like, how are we going to bring these different elements together and make something really enticing? And marketing, really, it's all about understanding people's emotions and understanding how people feel at different points. And the reader who is looking at a brand new author is going to have, you know, just a different set of emotions going on than when they're looking at someone that they already know that they like. So that's why I think it's really important to understand commercialism and where you want to have it in your overall business.
Are there base elements? Like, what is the minimum that you need to understand if you are measuring the commercial idea of a book? Because, or a story, because it doesn't need to be a book, but a story, right? Like, oh my God, wouldn't it be cool if? Like, that's a lot of times where we start, but we're thinking about, wouldn't it be cool if, because maybe that's something that we want to see or we want to read. But how do we bridge that to think, well, that's something that 1 million people want to see?
Yeah, I think that it is really important to understand, and we say this all the time, but it always needs to be said more, is you are not your reader. So it's really important to be able to remove yourself from the idea and think about it from an outside perspective. So it might sound cool to you, and it might sound cool to people around you, but without knowing whether or not, you know, this is high quality, how is someone going to know that this is going to be a great reading experience for them? Which is sadly why it's easier to be more commercial by going with what's already there, by making your books as on genre as possible. So when you're thinking about commercialism, you're generally thinking about two things. One is, how on genre is this book? Like, as in, if I go to Amazon right now, am I going to see a bunch of other things that will have very similar covers, will have very similar titles, descriptions, all of those things? Is it going to be very clear to my audience what kind of experience that they're going to have on this? But then, funny enough, within that, then you also want to have some form of hook that makes you a tiny bit different. So it's really important, I think, to know your genre and understand your genre, so that you can also drive that tiny little extra bit of curiosity that will help bring yours to the top. And then the second thing that you want to think about when considering how commercial an idea is making it frictionless. You know, you don't want to have anything in there that can prevent the yes. You know, you want people to be like, yes, I want to buy this. You don't want anything in there that makes them at all hesitant. So covers and descriptions are important. Reviews are important. You know, even like your pen names are important. All of these things can lead to yes, no decisions. Some of them are kind of sad. Like, I know in sci-fi, if you have a female name on the cover, that might make it slightly less commercial. If you're a female out there writing sci-fi, go ahead and stick your name on the book. Like, that doesn't mean not to do it, but you do want to understand what these elements are so that you can then tweak them and adjust them.
Right, and you don't want to use the data blind. So in the example that Niamh just gave, on the surface, yes, it's a loss to have a female name on a cover if you're talking about brute sales. Like, that's just it, just the blunt number at the end of the spreadsheet. But because you're a female author, with a female name that's visible, even though you're selling less books, you might have readers who are way more devoted to you because they can't find other authors like you. So you're more special to them, and therefore your per reader is worth more. And
right,
so
that could be your hook. That could be that little element that makes you a little bit different.
So it's really about understanding the criteria more than anything. So like this to me puts a definitive end to the argument that Dave keeps wanting me to write Santa porn. And I keep saying there's no market for Santa porn, and he's really insistent.
Wow, you said that so seriously.
Oh, he is serious.
I'm serious. And then he's like, but it's a hook. I'm like, that's more than a hook, dude. But seriously, it is about understanding what you're going to do, because it'd be really easy to look at the data and say, oh, well, I can't do that because, and it's not prescriptive in that way. It's about, I want to do this, so let me find the sweet spots. And so yes, Bonnie.
I don't know if this is going to be tied into what you're saying, but like, as I was listening to Niamh talk about like delivering the experience that readers want, but also having something that's a little bit different, do you look at that in terms of like, yes, let's tell the same kind of story, or let's use the same kind of tropes, but put a fresh twist on them? Or are you looking at it more from the perspective of, let's make sure that those tropes are in there and that the story type is in there, but then you can put other things that maybe don't normally show up in the genre, as that's the thing that makes it different? Could you talk a little bit about like how far you can go in the direction of being unique and still be in the expectations that you want readers to be bonding with?
I think once you get past the first couple of chapters, you're kind of in a safer zone. Someone's already said yes to you, so they're more likely to continue. So not hitting every single trope, or having something a little bit different, I don't think is too big a deal. What I'd be more concerned about is what is on the customer facing side, and what is different there. It does need to be something intriguing. So I would usually have something that's like a little bit different, but in the same vein, like in the same emotional experience as the genre. So I talk about cozy mystery a lot because that's a genre I've read a lot, and I sometimes write in. And in cozy mystery, people like quirkiness, they like funniness. So a good hook is something where it makes someone laugh. Like if someone is reading the book description and going, oh my God, that sounds hilarious. I've never heard of gargoyles running a library, or, like something that's they haven't yet seen before, but they still know that's going to be the same kind of experience that I'm looking for. So I do think it's important then to hit the tropes and to deliver on that emotional experience. But within an emotional experience, you can play around a little bit. I think as long as someone comes out of that getting what they wanted when they went into it. Like you're not going to write a romance book and market it as a romance book and not have a happily ever after. You just will have people really unhappy with you.
Dave, Santa porn does not have happy endings.
But it is cozy.
Well, they do
Santa.
actually.
Oh, they do have a happy ending.
They're just like a lot of blood is involved for some reason.
I think Santa anything is hard to sell. It's not terribly commercial. And that also, I think, you mentioned the conversation that we had around religion, and I would love to tie into that because I think that's really important. That's the kind of thing that you want to be considering when you're looking at being commercial. And it was really interesting because we were talking as a company about these different possible series that someone could do in the horror genre. And we're talking about whether
just out of curiosity, was Dave at that meeting?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, no, that's what I thought too.
Fuck you.
Is Dave ever really at meetings? But what was interesting is we were talking about this, like in the thriller genre and things like that. But what's interesting about religion is that if someone is looking at that from the outside of a book, they're not sure whether or not the author is going to treat the religion as something that is true or something that is false, is fiction. So it makes it very difficult to have your suspension of disbelief, because you don't know whether or not the characters believe it. Like, so you're getting really into belief systems rather than something that's more direct. This is supernatural. This is reality. So you don't want to have questions like that. And that's where I would, question Santa porn. Like, you're not getting into everyone's experience.
So they're speed bumps, right? Those are experiential speed bumps. So it's really no different than, you don't want a bunch of clunky phrases or typos or whatever in your work, because every single one is like, get out of the story, get out of the story. And for this, it's not necessarily get out of the story, it's more like get out of the experience, right? Because it's almost deeper than story. It's like foundational touchstones. And if you don't have the same set of touchstones, then you can't get as close to the narrative.
Yeah. And it really does all come down to the experience that someone wanted, which is what trends are all about as well. It's about what feeling do people want to have right now. And generally there's a few reasons for people to all want a sort of shared experience. But yeah, it's if, as long as you're delivering what someone wanted to feel going into it. And a religion can be a disconnect. It can be a fantastic tool, because if you're speaking someone's exact language, if they're like, oh my goodness, I had this exact same childhood, or like people with Catholic parents, for example, can bond really heavily over shared experiences. But that's going to be a disconnect for some people and a reason to be even closer for others. So it makes it less commercial in the broad sense, but it might make it more connected in the smaller sense.
This is similar to the conversations that we've had around commercial success versus cult classic. So what makes a blockbuster versus something that is very deeply loved by a segment of people, but never had the popcorn. Like Memento is one of my very favorite examples of this. People love that movie. And all the time you'll pitch some idea, not you, but somebody will pitch an idea, and they're like, and then everybody's made of dioramas, and you're like, whoa, that's crazy. I don't know what you're talking about. And they're
still my diorama world idea, a rare diorama reference. We don't get enough of those.
You can't do that.
I need a shoebox right now.
And then the guy is like, or girl can think of a diorama. In fact, probably a diorama would be more of a girl story anyway.
Why would
is there a category? Can we
click sexist bullshit?
I got a lot of dioramas.
I didn't even get to finish my joke about being sexist with a diorama because I was laughing too hard. Anyway, this is really stupid. The point is, the diorama person would say, well, Memento did it. Like, okay, Memento made $14 in the movie theater. Yes, it became a cult classic, which then allowed him to get other gigs in Hollywood. And actually, let's stick with this for a moment, because
wait, I saw Memento twice, so that's all $14.
Christopher Nolan is actually a great example, because he goes outside the norm so often. So Inception is not a movie that should have ever been made for a $150 million budget. And then it's like, but Inception, well, okay. It's not. Christopher Nolan made Memento, and that got him a lot of open doors, because the storytelling, regardless of how much money it made, the storytelling was obviously exceptional. So he made Insomnia, which was a relatively low budget remake of a Dutch film that had been really popular. And it's not Christopher Nolan's best work, but it's very professional. It does the job. It made money for the studio, which then got him the Batman Begins gig. Super commercial, because he has a very commercial property. However, he brought his aesthetic completely to that world. It did so well.
That's the only Batman I like.
That's he nailed that. And then that allowed him to make, like, what do you want to make? You have to make it for the studio, but you can kind of make what you want. And he made The Prestige, which is a wonderful puzzle box of a movie. It is so handsome and well acted, and just the tricks are all well delivered. It's very Christopher Nolan, but also commercial enough. Commercial enough. But he was really not doing that to be commercial. He was doing it because that allowed him to kind of stair step up. The next thing he did was The Dark Knight, which was a top 10 of all time at the time. It was a huge blockbuster. it redefined what a superhero movie could be. This is pre-MCU. You know, it was a big movie for Warner
And then
Brothers.
he did Sausage Party.
And that's when he got to do Inception. So Inception was earned, you know, and Dark Knight's, you know, kicking close to $1 billion. Yeah, you can make your $150 million art house movie if you sign for The Dark Knight Returns, you know.
Well, there is another type as well beyond cult classics and cult hits, which is breakout hits. And that's the one I hear more. You know, people will be like, well, what about the Da Vinci Code? Or what about, you know, Harry Potter? So these are things that weren't already on genre, yet we all know that they're super commercial because everyone around the world loved them. But they are, they're books and movies and things that gave us a new experience. So everyone, for whatever reason, who picked up that the first few copies of it were like, wow, this is amazing. I love this so much. I have to go tell everyone I know.
50 Shades of Grey.
Right, and that's because it's such a novel experience that it makes it word of mouth worthy. And so you see brand new genres popping up because a new experience is created, and then all of a sudden there's like this whole new genre opening up because people want more of that. They want more wizard at school stories, and they want more, they want more like sadomasochistic sex stories, or they want more billionaire porn. You know, whatever it is that they're that touched them about that initial story, it then becomes a new genre, but you won't necessarily know whether or not you have something like that. And I think that's a huge mistake that authors make, is I'm going to create a totally novel experience as my first thing. And then they're, you know, mystified that people don't pick it up. And it's really hard. It's like lightning in a bottle to make that breakout hit happen. So instead of trying to make a breakout hit, you're so much better off, you know, making something that's as commercial as possible with your own edge to it, with your own artistic sensibilities included in it. And then if you want to get more off genre and more, you know, obscure and do fun and different things, absolutely do that once you have people, you know, drawn into your world, so that then they can actually find these other things, because you want readers, right?
No. Let me go. I've been wanting to say something for 10 minutes, Sean.
I'm so sorry.
No. You're the guest, but I know Sean. He'll keep going. I wanted to say that I think that one of the things to keep in mind here, the missing piece is, okay, so two things. One is, and correct me if I'm wrong if anybody disagrees with this, is you can't really make a commercial hit. What you can do is make something with the potential to have a commercial hit. Correct. It's just kind of like, you can't make flames, but you can make a bunch of dry tinder, right? That could light at any moment.
Yeah, we can think of infinite number of supposed blockbusters that were total flops, right?
Right, that just didn't work for one reason or another. So there's always a factor of luck, and so the more you produce and the better your aim is, then the more likely you are. But what I wanted to say was when Sean was talking about Christopher Nolan, the minute you said Christopher Nolan, I had a thought, and you addressed some of what I was going to say. But I think this something to keep in mind here is that it's a know your why situation to some degree. Now, I'm not in Christopher Nolan's head. That'd be kind of cool place to be, though, like being John Malkovich.
Better than being John Malkovich, probably.
But I don't know how hard he was swinging for commercial fences from the beginning. I have a feeling that he was a little bit more concerned with making a really cool movie and then covering himself, right? Like he wanted to make his money back. He wanted to please his partners. This is my guess. I have no idea. But I think a lot of authors try to swing for the fences from the beginning because it's just sort of like, I got to pay my rent. That's what you do in this game, is you try to make maximum amount of money. But what Nolan did with the one you didn't mention was Following, which was a respectable, good.
Oh yeah,
like
that's a first
$1,000, if that. I mean, maybe less. It was just his friends on the weekends. It's in black and white. I wasn't blown away, but it's a good first movie. And then Memento was like good, and like this guy's got something going on. And I think that the way that I would look at that is that was I mean, you said earned, but I would almost say like he wanted to make something that would, because you can either grab attention popularly by getting a lot of dollars and a lot of searchlights in the sky and your name in lights, or you can get a lot of attention by being awesome and maybe not making a lot of money. And by making amazing films, it feels like a longer game. So the goal, if I were in Nolan's shoes, would be to make something great, not necessarily commercial, so that people could say this guy's got chops and then use to stair step up. But if you're only working on this project today and that's all you can think about and you can't think about the next 10 projects, then you're going to like, well, I'll copy the Da Vinci Code and I'll just follow in somebody else's trend rather than making a voice for myself. But even if you then take off, chances are it's like a peak, flash in the pan, and then you're done.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because Nolan has always been very clearly interested in legacy. And what proves this is Dunkirk. So Dunkirk is the movie that he was always trying to make. He knew he could not make Dunkirk when he made Following, right? Zero chance. He made Dark Knight Rises so he could eventually make Dunkirk. Dunkirk is even riskier than Inception. There's no high concept to it. He shot the whole thing on IMAX. That was the first time a movie had ever been shot entirely in IMAX that wasn't an IMAX movie. And it's almost a silent film.
Yeah, I wasn't blown away by that. It felt like Dunkirk felt the least Nolan. It's like because Jackie Brown.
It's deeply personal to him. It was a deeply personal thing. He's like, this is the story that nobody knows that everybody should know. This is the World War II story that the world does not know. And so he had scaled his entire career to make that movie. And now Tenet, which, if you've followed any of the Hollywood closing stories, you've seen Tenet over all of that, because it is the movie. Even Disney's Mulan is not as big in scope as Tenet. Warner Brothers has $200 million in just production, not even including all the marketing and everything on Tenet. And Nolan has fought hard to not just have this stream, because right now that'd be a huge boon for HBO Max if they just dropped Tenet. They'd get a lot of subscribers. And Nolan is like, no, this is a theatrical experience. Do not do that. So he's always been about his film and about his legacy and about his quality.
Right. I mean, he and Tarantino that primarily argued for Kodak to not go out of business.
Yeah. And then Tarantino's the same, where, he's like, look, this was with when Kill Bill came out, and he was talking about, look, I'm an artist. I love that I get this much money to make my pictures, but I am an artist. I want to put my
He's
art
trying
first.
to make movies that he's a fan of.
But they need to make money, or I don't get to play it anymore. Another really good example of this, somebody who's clearly always been about quality and legacy, is David Fincher. And right before Fight Club came out, it was getting a lot of bad reviews. Fight Club is really amazing if you look at it, a human behavior, black box thinking kind of thing, because that movie got really panned, and then a lot of critics changed their opinions once it was clear that the movie was awesome. Entertainment Weekly gave it an A+ in the end of the year roundup, or maybe an A, but a D- upon their original review. So that was one of them. And
was it a different reviewer?
It was, but on purpose. They were.
Well, yeah.
Right. And so this was an interview that I read with David Fincher in the Orange County Register the weekend before Fight Club came out, and they were asking him about, do the bad reviews bother you? And you would expect the normal auteur answer of, well, no, I made the movie that I want to make, and so people can like it or not. And he said, well, of course they bother me. He said, I need the way the Hollywood system is set up right now, I need as many people to see the movie opening weekend as possible, because that's where most of the money is made. And if my movies don't do that, I'm not commercial, and I don't get to make the other movies I want to make. So I care very much about the bad reviews. And I thought that was the most beautifully honest answer I'd ever seen a director give. And it's still, I remember it now, it's 22 years ago, right? So that's interesting.
But I think that actually also illustrates Johnny's point, is that if you know what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and you understand the system that you're operating in, then you can pull the right levers at the right times to make that long-term vision come true. And I'm assuming that most of the people who are listening to this or watching this are storytellers of some kind. You probably have some kind of aim either to make money from your books or to have a legacy, to have readers, to have people follow your work. And either one of those, it's going to be easier for you if you start with at least being as commercial as you're able to right now while still being true to yourself. Like, don't sell your soul. Don't go hop on, the latest trend that I love K-lytics, but don't like, Alex said this was a hot niche, I'm going to go write 10 of these books.
Santa porn.
You want to make sure that you're being true to your artistic sensibilities, but making that as commercial as possible so that you can use the system that you're in to get you to where you want to go.
Okay, so, sorry, Bonnie, please.
No, it's okay. If I could just ask a quick question. It sounds, Niamh, like you are very, very focused on the reader's emotional experience.
Yeah.
As an author, if I want to train myself to think more commercially, is there anything else I pay attention to, or is it 100% like making sure I'm delivering a familiar experience?
I think it's all about becoming a consumer yourself. I read 100 books a year. I watch TV almost every night. Like even sometimes I don't finish up on calls because I'm in a weird time zone until 10 o'clock at night. And then I'll go down and I'll watch an hour or two of TV because I love that stuff. And I don't watch, like, I know Sean in particular, I know you're so great at analyzing and thinking about the choices that were made. I just experience, I cry in movies
me too.
all the time. Like, I get so swept up in it that it's kind of sad because my husband is really into the sort of behind the scenes. He loves thinking about choices. He'll be like, oh, look, they made a mistake there, continuity error. And I'm like, shut up. Like, these are my friends. Like, this is real. So I think that will help more than anything because it will help you know how you feel during something. And while we're all different, a lot of those experiences and emotions are universal. And the other thing, I think for me, I came from a marketing background. I was marketing lots of other stuff before I was ever marketing any kind of story. But I was using a lot of story in the marketing in order to create specific emotional experiences. So I feel like it was like learning to understand how people make decisions based on emotions, and then understanding what emotions I'm delivering. And then just making sure that those things all match up, that the emotion they want when they're buying and the reasons that they're buying are what you're delivering on with your work, at least somewhat. Like, you can absolutely surprise audiences, but you want to make sure that they go away like totally satisfied, like, yes, this was what I was hoping for from this experience.
So I have a thought on this because while you were talking, Niamh, I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about how it's always like it's real easy to think commercial to the exclusion of anything else. And so we're always like, well, try to balance commercialism and your true artistic sensibility. And I think let's see what you guys think of this, because I think it's kind of an interesting way to think about it, is I would aim to create I would look at what I have enjoyed consuming and the most commercial pieces of that. So for instance, for me, I did really like The Dark Knight, and I'm not alone. Like, that was a box office success. It was like a bona fide, like, I'm not in a small group there. And then I would say,
don't get much bigger than that.
Right. So I would say, look at the things that you have enjoyed that meet your artistic sensibilities that were also commercial, rather than just aiming for commercial and nothing else. So like 50 Shades of Grey was commercial. True. And a lot of people say, well, billionaire S&M, whatever, is hot right now because 50 Shades of Grey. I don't like it, but okay, that's a hot trend. And it seems to me that a really good way to do it would be to look at the trends or the commercial trajectories that you already enjoy, so you're hitting both at once. So you are true to yourself, but it's like within the skin of your most commercial self, as opposed to like that little indie film that I really enjoyed, but nobody else would. Well, I'm not going to do that one when I'm trying to be commercial.
I think that's a really good point. And if you know that you want to, say, for example, if you want to make people feel happy, you could do that writing sweet romance. You could do that writing adventure books. You could do that writing children's books. Like there's tons of scope within particular emotional experiences. And actually, I think talking about trends is super important. Trends are always a reflection of what's going on in the wider world. They, sometimes they can pop up from a new and novel experience, like Harry Potter, I think, is a pretty good example of that. That doesn't really reflect the zeitgeist all that much. But typically speaking, trends come from either allowing people to express a particular kind of emotion in a safe way that they don't have another way to deal with. So that's usually things like horror or thriller, anything where you're like really tense, really scared, you get those kinds of experiences. It's not really that safe necessarily to go and put yourself into the experiences where you'd feel that in real life, or maybe you just need to sort of let off steam. But then the other side of that is the emotions that you're craving. So there's sort of emotions you need to feel for like catharsis reasons, and emotions that you crave. Like a lot of romance falls into emotions that you crave. Billionaire romance, it's all about that knight in shining armor who will sweep you off your feet and look after you, and you don't have to worry about anything. So it gives you that sense of safety and security. Sweet romance gives you that sense of just like true love is real and it's not all complicated. So usually trends do one of those two things. And you can almost anticipate trends based on what's happening in the world. We could almost do a whole podcast on that, where we could go through all the different decades and different trends and how they were.
I would love that. That actually is really great. Or maybe even a season of like a series.
That would be
podcasts, right?
Super fun. Yeah, that's one of my very favorite topics of all time, because when you start to once you start to turn this on, you can't turn it off again. This realizing how different hits and different trends that were happening at particular times, really you can almost say, well, that's because of this,
But what a ninja skill for a storyteller to develop.
Yes.
To get a sixth sense of what's coming. So yeah, I'd love that. And I'd love to just close on just a little bit of future casting. But right before we get there, Stacy's had a question for a little while, and I want to pop it in. So she says, so how do you determine the difference between unique and wonderful and weird, forgettable? And so I think that's a really good question, because we all think, oh, we have great ideas. And yeah, so what I'll say on this is like the Wachowskis are capable of doing the most amazing things, and they're also capable of Jupiter Ascending, which, is like weird and forgettable, I guess. Like no one talks about that movie, right?
I liked that movie.
Well, I actually don't think I saw it, or I slept through it, because I feel like I've seen some of it, but I can't tell you what it's about. But for whatever
they're hit
reason,
or miss for me.
It didn't click. For whatever reason, that story, that world did not click, but other things that they did had. So could you have seen those elements? And it's like what we were talking about at the top of the hour, where that's just a crapshoot. That could have been a blockbuster. It just didn't land right. Or what do you say about something like that? And how do we answer Stacy's question?
And real quickly, so you guys saw Jupiter Ascending. How is the story, the core of the story? Forget about all the sci-fi additions, and was it good? I mean, I know that that's the dumbest question to ask, but
I don't remember it being good. I remember being confused. I
remember it being okay, but again, I liked the experience. I liked I actually generally don't like sci-fi. It's really rare for me to like sci-fi. I don't usually like things not being reality, but I thought that it was really beautiful and fun, and the characters were really fun, and I really enjoyed the relationships. So because those felt really real to me and really honest, I did like the movie. But yeah, the story from start to finish, I think, was just fairly normal. It didn't
felt like I'd seen it 100 times.
Yeah,
before,
like I didn't feel
10 times better.
Yeah, this person, and like complicated space operatic relationships I vaguely remember. I mean, yeah.
Just a notch above Flash Gordon from the 80s.
Yeah. So, but okay, obviously our world has gone through some major duress, right? And we are at a shift. So that's going to change trends. It always does. If you look historically, like you were just talking about, you can see those points. So what do you see happening? What kinds of trends do you see as a result?
I don't think we did answer the Stacey question. So let me just cover that real quick, which is that I think that really, if you're trying to be super commercial, you want to play it a little bit safe, which is the really sad, not that fun answer to give you. That you want to make sure that you're doing something sort of within the realm. So you would look for areas that you can be creative within a specific genre. So I kind of look at things different people have done and gone, okay, like in a thriller, you can have a surprise ending. So what's your surprise going to be that feels really kind of cool and interesting to you? Or, you know, in the cozy mysteries, it's really about like, is there some kind of like a talking creature? Or is there going to be something that's really unexpected and funny? I love bringing experiences from one area to another. So sometimes you can bring sort of elements from one genre into another safely, but I would do it with a lot of care. Like with each work that you're doing, I would say, is this to be, like, I always call it stupidly commercial. Is it stupidly commercial? And if that's the case, you're taking very little risk, sadly. You want enough that it's like gonna drive someone's curiosity and they're gonna enjoy it. But beyond that, you don't wanna go too far afield. And then down, as you go down on into your more experimental works, then go a little bit crazier. So I would always say, think about what the specific work you're doing, what is it that you want to accomplish? So if you're like the Wachowski brothers and you're like, I want to swing, that's all that they want to do, is they want to create new and interesting things. Sometimes it's going to work, sometimes it's not. But if they were trying to be commercial all the time, they probably wouldn't be creating great stuff. So I think,
yeah, I have a take on that might be a little obtuse, and I don't want to start a whole thing because we are at an hour, but it occurs to me that the most success, because I thought of this when you said play it safe a little bit, and I think we can sharpen that a little bit, because I don't think we need to play entirely safe. The most successful stories seem to have, and I'm generalizing, and it's just my opinion, seem to have a pretty simple story at their heart. So The Matrix is a very, very simple story. It's got a lot of really intense sci-fi dressing and what the fuck and whatever, but the story is so simple. It's like the oldest story. It's just a chosen one story. It's the Jesus story, basically. And so that is going to work. It's kind of like, so, you know, Amy's ice cream, right? Where you have the base ice cream and then you add mix-ins, and you can take, you know, a safe flavor like vanilla and you can mix whatever into it and make a vanilla that's awesome. But if you start with some weird fucking story that's like experimental in itself, and I'm going to have the pistachio bubblegum
this is
grape,
a great analogy.
and then mix in a bunch of great mix-ins, it doesn't work. Like the core has to be pure and simple. And my guess, that's why I asked about Jupiter Ascending, is my guess is, I mean, I watch a lot of movies now, and I notice that the ones that do well, it sounds so trite. It's always, always, always the story. Nothing can save a bad story, and vice versa.
Okay, yeah, I'll add to that real quickly, because James Cameron is arguably the most commercial director of all time, because he doesn't make nearly as many movies as Spielberg, say, but when he does, they usually end up at #1 of all time. So he did it with Titanic, and then he did it, you know, with Avatar, and it took Avengers Endgame to beat him. And not only that, it took Avengers Endgame doing a sneaky little re-release like a few months later to get a couple $1 million more to tip them over the top. So the reason is, and people will criticize his storytelling. I'm not a huge fan of his storytelling. I'm a huge fan of what he does, because he pushes the medium forward. He thinks in big canvas, and he does think, I want as many people to see my awesome movies, which are really about this new technology that I've developed, as possible. And so to do that, I'm going to think in terms of, like, if you look at Avatar, we've seen the story before. The characters are cliche. I mean, the fucking military vet has a literal scar on his
Oh yeah,
face.
that guy's the biggest cliche in the world.
He looks like an action figure, right? But that's his version of commercial
experience. And I think that what is so important, and I'm going to sort of respectfully disagree, is only because context is what matters. And if you're a writer writing books to put on Amazon, you shouldn't be trying to be James Cameron creating Avatar. You should be trying to get people reading your books. And so when I'm talking about commercial in terms of an author writing for, you know, with the express design of being commercially successful on Amazon with books, then you do want to keep it that little bit safer, because we are kind of comparing different mediums, and in the medium of Hollywood, yes, you want to be out there being as commercial as possible, but like also breaking out. We're talking about breakout hits now. You want to be like the normal summer movie that everyone forgets next year. That's actually what you want for your books, because that's going to help you to get the most audience, and then you can go and start to make more things that are more exciting and more, you know, breakout hit worthy, but once you have your audience built up. So
right. No, I totally agree with that. I'm not, when I say Cameron, I'm not talking about the shoot for the fences, change technology. I'm talking about when he's making his epic movies, he doesn't think like, okay, the way that James Cameron will make his best version of a movie and the way Christopher Nolan will make best version, I think Christopher Nolan is going to err on the side of legacy. What is going to hold up as the best story over time? And Cameron is more like, I want a blockbuster. I want to be king of the world. I think he's going to go with the more commercial choice because it equals more people. So he's so focused on the whiz bang that he doesn't worry about the texture of his story. He worries about how many people.
He's worried about the visuals and the theatrical experience.
Yes. And so that means that when it comes to the actual story, he's relying on stuff that is very easy to consume. It's like what Johnny said about the vanilla mixing. That's what I mean about Cameron. He gets a vanilla mixing because he wants to put all this other shit in there. And so a story that is just very easy. I mean, Titanic is a very simple story. Avatar is Dances with Wolves, you know, with aliens, right? So with a grizzled military vet, like it's got some, you know, it's a medley of tropes, but that really works because it doesn't get in the way, and that's what I mean. Like,
I hit the point for a while. He's been raising his hand.
Oh, I was waiting for quick correction. Wachowski's sisters, not brothers. They're both trans.
Yeah.
Or Wachowskis, if you want to encompass their entire career.
There you go. That's probably the better way to put it. So do we want to talk about trends and Corona and?
Well, I have 5,000 things I could say, but I'm also thinking of the fact that we're going pretty long. So do we want to consider part 2, or do we want to just let this go really long, or what do you want to do?
I'm okay letting it go long and just finishing the conversation.
I have maybe 2 minutes of thoughts on it. And then we can absolutely do something else that's just all about trends. I would love to do a whole season on trends. So let's definitely look at that. But so yeah, when you're talking about trends, it usually is either this catharsis or this way of relief, you know. So you're going to see things that come next that do those two things. And it's hard to take this conversation out of the context of stuff that has gone before. But I think particularly around horror and genres like that, those are always reflecting the fears of what's going on. You know, so you have, let's just say in the 60s and 70s, for example, you have a lot of these fears about the breakdown of the family. And so you see that in the horror, in the horror genre with, you know, that you have all of these monsters that are kind of coming from within the house. You have evil children, you have religion being used in sort of weird and horrific ways. So it's this really close to home horror. You have zombie movies for the first time ever, which is fear of, you know, class differences and also the people who are around you. So I think we're going to see other things like that, where right now the fear is of a couple of things. You know, right now we're dealing with a virus. So doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be a bunch of stuff about viruses. It means there's going to be a bunch of stuff that reflects the fear of being out of control, of the scary thing coming from within and being totally invisible. So I think that there's going to be more stuff that has an invisible creature, maybe that's inside the house that you can't get rid of. I don't know what else would happen in horror with that, but I also think another thing that's happening right now is the government. You know, people are having massive upheaval about how the country works in the US, and often the US is the source of a lot of these trends. So I think dystopian.
You're welcome.
I think it won't be YA dystopian. I think it's going to be back to the old traditional dystopia for adults. You know, this is not
Handmaid's
like,
Tale.
yes, Handmaid's Tale rather than Hunger Games. This is
Right.
not going to be like these beautiful dystopias.
Well, because Hunger Games was like escapist dystopia.
Yes, yeah, and Hunger Games was this chance to feel a catharsis, but I think it's going to go a lot deeper. I think it's going to be more raw, and there's going to be stuff that has, you know, like some really grisly stuff happening in it. A lot of things maybe within. I also think that there will be a lot of stuff to do with the father figure potentially being the threat within a household. And not because of anything anyone is doing, but because it reflects the sort of, you know, the trend in terms of the Me Too movement and the government stuff and the within the household problem that the virus kind of illustrates. But I also think that on the flip side, you're going to get so much more on the like sweet and really loving relationships. You're going to have clean romance of probably all of the genres. I think will do the best, but also I think buddy stuff that it focuses a lot on really strong friendships and relationships, and perhaps travel and adventure, because we can't do it right now. So we can escape into travel and adventure through books. So that's some of the things I'm predicting will happen, very loosely based on those things that are happening.
Yeah, that all sounds right to me.
Cool. Okay. Well, I'm glad I didn't try too hard to shut that down, because that was like 2 extra minutes and it bookended it. All right. So thanks everybody for listening to the Story Studio podcast. Thank you, Niamh and Bonnie, for being on. Sean and Dave too, but fuck you guys. You're here all the time.
That's fair.
And thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Adios.